You are welcome to tonight's program. Tonight, I would like to I would like to take us on a journey on the process, on a process through which God recovers his messengers. Process through which God recovers his messengers. Title of my message tonight is Learning from the Eagle. Learning from the Eagle. As we know, pruning, when you begin to shed weight or prune yourself, begin to um, allow yourself to go through the process, when you begin to allow yourself to go through a process of recovery, it's not something that is palatable. Tonight, I would like to recall our attention or perhaps make us think back during the time and days of the COVID, what was happening around the globe, how the church was shut down, how people were contacting the deadly virus, and then the policies that were put in place by governments around the globe to ensure the disease does not continue to spread as we were told. However, something was also going on in the church. The church of God was shut down, and then this was a strange occurrences to this particular generation. The generation have not seen where government began to shut the church. And so we, God's children, perceive a deliberate and a methodical attack, a methodical attack against the house of God. And that made us to retire to prayers. We began to seek the face of God, the children of God around the globe, as we were isolated because of the policies and the diseases and other things that were going on, how the children of the devil want to take over governments around the world. So the children, this necessitated the going back to prayer. This necessitated God's children retiring to prayers. This prayer, we went in, we didn't just go to prayer, but we went to prayer to ensure that we found the face of God, that God shows up for us. And then most of us went through a different method of prayer. We enter the issue of the activity of the midnight began in earnest. Fasting and prayers began in earnest. People began to call upon the Lord. And that was something that is also good. And God loved it, how the children of God began to seek His face. And you know, the Bible tells us that when we call upon the Lord, He will answer us. So it is our duty as human beings to call upon the Lord. And it is also the responsibility or the prerogative of our God to answer and to show forth when we call and seek His attention. So tonight I want to let you know that pruning is the key to production, and brokenness is the process by the hand of God. An advanced prayer will yield incredible result of a deeper relationship and a productivity as one goes through the process of pruning in the hand of God. So this is a method that have been tested and have been proven. So your isolation, the chastisement of the flesh, all these things yielded incredible results. We saw a result of revival. We are also seeing it, and we will see it the more as the prayer progresses, as the people long on in prayer. So Isolation and depression created by COVID had made many to go back in the place of prayer. It is a beautiful place to be, I must tell you. Prayer is a very beautiful place to be, and that's what I have come to let you to know this night, that we cannot cease in taking advantage of this beautiful and wonderful place to be. But unfortunately, I realize that what makes people to stay in the place of prayer, or what makes people to go to the place of prayer most of the time is depression. Most of the time is trouble. Most of the time is when situation are not working in their favor. Most of the time it is challenges and difficulties and oppressions and affliction. These are the things that make the people to go or return to God in prayers. So COVID-19 and then and the COVID-19, famine, lack of food, isolation, depression push men and women and boys and girls to seek God's face. And now it appears like this deadly virus it has dissipated, and the people are coming out of the abnormal life, so to say, and now we are returning back to the usual way of life of not praying. But before you or myself we return to the usual way of living our life, I mean the life of prayerlessness. Before we can return back to prayerlessness and return back to normalcy of not seeking the face of God, before we can return back, not fasting and seeking God and to understand what He is saying at every point in time. Before we can do that, it is also important that we look at what this bird called the eagle usually do. When eagle discover that he is weak in flying, or the mouth, the beak is no longer strong enough to devour his prey, the eagle will move higher into up onto the rock. The eagle goes climb high above the sky in the highest of the rock, and there the eagle takes time to begin to uproot its feathers one at a time. It takes off its feathers, and I believe this process of taking off its feathers is not an easy one, and I don't think the eagle enjoys the process, but the eagle stays there and keep on uprooting and then picking out its feathers until the old feathers are shedded away. And now the eagle begins to wait. The eagle begins another process of waiting. The eagle waits on the feather until the feather is grown back. And when the eagle's feather grown back, the eagle begin to will return back to its original glory and will now fly, and then it will fly better and higher than what it was, and then a better strength comes upon it. I want to use this medium to state that you, as a child of God, wherever you are listening from, and all of you and all the people that will come in contact with this message, when you begin to realize that your strength is fading away, when you begin to realize that there is depression, but you do not have the willingness and the eager you usually do have to seek God in prayer is no more there, or the flesh has taken advantage of your person. Now you need to learn from the eagle. Prophet Isaiah captured this in his writing very vividly when he told us in the book of Isaiah chapter 40, verse 31, and he tells us, he said, he made us to know that, but they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagle. They shall run and not be weary, and they shall work and not faint. I want to let you know, walking and not fainting, walking and not fainting is something that we need to understand. Running and walking, not fainting, not being tired becomes so important, because the man of God, prophet Isaiah, captured this so vividly. Because if we begin to learn to fight and not withdrawing, if we begin to fly and not withdrawing from the height from the height of the place we are going as a result of reduction in strength, if we begin to continue, we will get to where we are heading to. But if we resist and not learn from what the eagle usually do, the eagle returning back to where it's its original place of shedding of feathers. If he refuses to do that, if you refuses of returning back to shed the feathers so you can renew strength, sometimes you begin to weary. You begin to weary because it is also made of the in the book of Isaiah chapter 40 in verse 30, it made us know vividly that the yoke the youth in its strength do weary. The youth do weary. So the tiredness of a man in his young age is recognized. But it made us to know that they that wait upon the Lord, they that wait upon the Lord, their strength will be renewed. So, in a time like this, it is necessary that we begin to wait upon the Lord. In a time like this, it is necessary that we go back to God in waiting and then understanding that the time in which we are is not the time of relaxing. The time in which we are is not the time of relaxing. Even though when the people are returning back to normalcy, the people are returning back to the usual way of living their life, not praying, not seeking the Lord, not doing what that is required to stay red hot, to stay alive in the spirit, not doing those things. And the flesh, Mr. Flesh, is hitting the thought so hard that the thought is now sleeping and slumbering, returning back to sleeping and slumbering. This cannot be accepted. God is not interested in sort. The Holy Ghost is knocking and saying, men and brethren, it is time to get up from the bed. It is time to return back to the place of prayer. It is time to find the altar again. It is time to make your fire to begin to come forth, and it is time to fan the coal of fire so the coal can come to its elasticity of red hot. The time to fan the flame is now. There is no time to resist, or there is no time to slow down the process of prayer. There is no time to slow down the process of going to God in prayer. There is no time to slow down the process. We must continue. We must continue. The continuity is something that is required. We must persist. We must persist. We must continue. We must ensure that the resilience and the strength to continue is there. We cannot allow Satan to deceive us. We cannot allow our flesh to tell us that we have prayed enough. We have taken this prayer too far. No, that is a voice of deception. We cannot continue. In fact, I want to tell you that prayer is a way of life. In fact, the midnight activity is the way of the patriarch of old. The Bible told us that those who went before us, they took advantage of the midnight. According to the book of Acts of Apostles, chapter 16, Paul and Silas, as they prayed and sang at the middle of the night, the Bible told us how the Spirit of God came down in the prison, and suddenly there was and the earthquake came with an earthquake, and the prison doors were opened, the chains on their feet were loosened. All these things happened as a result of persistency and taking advantage of what has worked before, not because of depression, affliction, and all the famine and all these things that can make us to seek God. And now we think that things are not beautiful, and then we can no longer seek God. That cannot be accepted. It will not happen. So we have to seek God with all our hearts. On that note, we have to go to God in prayers. I want us to go back to God in prayers right now and then renew our strength. Thank you, dear Holy Father.